Out of doubt, out of dark, to day's rising, he rode singing in the sun, sword unsheathing. Hope he rekindled, and in hope ended. Over death, over dread, over doom lifted. Out of loss, out of life, unto long glory.
Hey there, gang. I'm Danny J.
And I'm Joel N. And
we are what?
We are Keep on Tolkien. Welcome back.
Yeah, or welcome to, even, you know? Today we're going to start off with an announcement that you're probably tired of hearing by now, but...
Guess what? Here it is.
We got new merch.
We've got KOT merch available. Get your KOT shirts.
KOT shirts.
That's right. You heard us right.
And check that out at keep-on-tolkien-podcast.tmail. That's TEEMILL.com.
Yeah, we've got new t-shirt designs coming, and we've got other new merch to come in the future. So go check it out and go represent your favorite Tolkien podcast. And also coming up,
yeah. Now that you've sat through that, check this out. This is actually big. I didn't see this on the outline.
Yeah. This is big news, everyone. So make sure you tune in. We are going to be starting shortly our weekly reacts to the Amazon Rings of Power show.
Yeah, for every week.
You
get an episode.
You guys thought that KOT was about to be over. Little did you know that it's actually
just starting.
Just beginning.
But yeah, we're going to be doing that. We're not quite sure the format yet. Maybe TikTok and YouTube, we're thinking.
Yes. So
we're doing video.
Likely you'll be seeing our lovely faces.
Our faces.
But you'll be getting that every week. So stay tuned for that.
And we'll have more details on that as they come.
So today, like we said earlier, for part 2 of our season 5, we're talking everything Rohan.
Rohan. I'm so in love with Rohan now.
Yeah, after this whole Rohan series, we've definitely got a deeper appreciation for them as a kingdom and as a people.
Exactly.
Speaking of people, today's subject for episode 66 is going to be
one of our faves.
Everyone's favorite, I hope. The one and only King Théoden, King of Rohan.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, briefly, let's review who King Théoden is. He's the son of Thengel, the 17th king of Rohan, and the last of the second line of kings.
And he led the Rohirrim at the Battle of the Hornburg.
And he's also famous for leading the, famous ride of the Rohirrim during the Battle of Pelennor Fields.
Yeah, everybody remembers that shit.
So let's start, as always, with a few of his names. So we've got the name everyone knows him by, Théoden, which means king in Old English, actually. We've also got Ednew, which means renewed. And then there is Thengling, which means son of Thengel.
There's, of course, King of Rohan, Lord of the Mark, Horsemaster, one of my favorites here, Hanbury Han, shout out, shafted. Father of Horsemen, and also the Renowned, and that's more after his death.
Becomes known as the Renowned. So just before we get any further...
Disclaimer.
If we're going to talk about Théoden at all, we would be remiss if we did not talk about Bernard Hill.
Yeah. Where's Bernard Hill's Oscar, man? He fucking chews scenery in all these fucking scenes that he's in.
I literally cannot think of Théoden without seeing his face. He just encompasses Théoden for me. He did such an amazing job, and he was...
good.
His acting job was just phenomenal. I do genuinely think that if there would have been any acting Oscars given out to the Lord of the Rings,
would have been Bernard Hill.
It probably would have been Bernard Hill because he just he killed it.
He crushed it.
He killed it. He made me believe, he was a grieving father and, all of these things.
Totally. And there's a lot of hate for him on the internet. A lot of people hate him. And we just like to say as a podcast, fuck you to those people.
We officially endorse Bernard Hill as King Théoden.
Yes, officially endorsed by KOT Podcast. Bernard Hill.
So let's get into a little bit about Théoden himself.
Théoden was born in Lossarnark, Gondor in the Third Age, year 2948, down there in southern Gondor.
Yeah, that was something I actually didn't previously know.
Sunny southern Gondor.
Théoden was the only son of King Thengel of Rohan and Morwen Steelsheen of Lossark.
What a fucking name.
Morwen Steelsheen?
Yeah.
Isn't that fucking cool?
That's a Gondorian chick's name if I've ever heard one.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Morwen was a descendant of the former prince of the fief of Belfalas, so she's from down south in the nice warm sun.
Yeah. What a place. I want to go to southern Gondor.
Theoden also had an older sister, and he had 3 younger sisters. So some of you may be thinking he only had one sister, and it depends on which account. There's 2 accounts. One, he only has the one sister, and in other accounts, he had 2 more.
Okay. So one is important.
One is particularly important that we're going to
Yeah.
talk about as well.
Yeah. Théoden was born in Gondor and spent at least 5 years of his life there. Weird enough. It's his mom's homeland, right?
Yeah, and so in the year 2953, when he was 5 years old, this is when his grandfather, King Thengel, died. Now, there's going to be a lot of Engels here, so
Yeah.
this is F like Frank Fengel.
Frank Fengel, yep.
So his grandfather was King Fengel, and he passed away, passing the title of king to his father, Thengel.
And I just don't want you guys to get confused here with all these Fengels and Thengels. Also, there's Thingol from the first stage.
Yeah, then there's also the elven king Thingol.
Elu Thingol.
Elu Thingol from the first stage. So
keep them straight at home, guys.
do the best you can.
Do your best.
We're not gonna hold it against you.
Yeah, it's fun though. Right? It's fun to navigate.
So that year, again in 2953, when his grandfather died, that's the year that the family moved back to Edoras and Rohan. Naturally, I mean, their family's in Gondor right now, and now Théoden's father has to go become king, so they got to go back to Rohan. And after they go back, Théoden's father Thingol rules as king from Medusel, the Golden Hall.
Yeah, and in 2963, Théoden's younger sister, she was born.
Yeah, this is the sister that you need to know.
Yeah, the need-to-know sister.
Théoden really loved Théoden particularly, most of all among his sisters. That is, if you go by the account where he had other sisters. Yeah. And they say it's because Théoden and Théoden shared similar courageous traits. They're, similar. They're very much alike.
Sick. While Théoden's father Thengel was king of Rohan, the speech of Gondor was actually often used in his father's house.
Yeah, and when they say the speech of Gondor, they mean like the common tongue, but spoken in like a fair manner.
Yeah, in the what would you call that, cadence of in the syntax of Gondorians, right?
Yeah, they talk about it a lot in the book when they describe how Boromir speaks.
Yeah, and Boromir does when he speaks common tongue. He speaks differently than everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has like a high manner when he speaks, and he speaks all
very formal.
Yeah, so that's the kind of tongue that they started using now in Rohan, because naturally Théoden and his father lived in Gondor for so long. But not only that, but as a result, that means Théoden spoke Westeron, the common tongue, Rohirric, their own ancient tongue, and he spoke some Elvish. He spoke some Sindarin.
Yeah, why wouldn't he? He's an educated man.
He's from Gondor, and they're all about their, Elvish influence down there.
Oh yeah, they're elf friends.
Being of the Dunedain.
Yeah. So let's talk about a guy. Let's talk about a guy from our past named Thorongil. You might remember him.
Yeah, so this is when we get into the Thorongil years.
The Thorongil years.
So in the years 2957 to 2980, this is when a strange man by the name of Thorongil appeared in Rohan out of the wild and served the king at the time in his military.
This man was found to be a great leader of men.
Just natural.
Just natural, dude. And he went by Thorongil. Which means, what again? Eagle of the Star. And at one time or another, Thorongil served both King Thingol of Rohan and Ecthelion II of Gondor. Yeah, so that's Denethor's daddy.
That's Denethor's dad and Théoden's dad.
Théoden's dad. I knew all your dads.
I knew all your dads.
I could kick all your dads' asses.
Yeah, so there was a time where he was just going around between the kingdoms. And so this was when Théoden was only about 11 years old. That's when Thorongil was serving his father, Thingol. And while we know this mysterious character to be none other than Aragorn, son of Arathorn, they did not know that at the time.
Yeah, and check out episodes 25 and 26, our Aragorn character profile.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. Aragorn was friends with Théoden's dad, and
yeah, palling around. Yeah, he says that he knows Aemor's dad too.
And we have a excerpt here.
I do not think your law was made for such a chance, said Aragorn, nor indeed am I a stranger. For I have been in this land before, more than once, ridden with the host of the Rohirrim, though under another name and in another guise. You I have not seen before, for you are young. But I have spoken with Eamund your father, and Théoden son of Thengel.
Yeah, just kind of proving his age there.
Yeah, I'm 87 years old, goddammit.
Yeah, so technically Théoden he was only 11 when Aragorn was running around as Thorongil, but he may have very well met him.
Oh, yeah, totally. That's why I was wondering if they ever had, we were talking about this, I was like, did you ever find in the text if they ever had a conversation about, like, hey, remember that dude Thorongil?
Yeah,
Dude.
I mean, here Aragorn is saying that he's spoken with Théoden, the son of Thengel, so Aragorn clearly remembers him, but we don't know whether or not Théoden does. I'm not sure he ever says.
Yeah.
So moving forward with Théoden's life, as he grew into manhood, he ended up marrying a lovely woman by the name of Elfhild sometime during the 2970s.
Yeah, and in 2978, she gave birth to their only child, Theodred. However, Elfhild actually died in childbirth, leaving only Théoden to raise his newborn son.
Yeah, it was pretty tragic. Now, in the year 2980, this is when Théoden was 32 years old and his father Thengel died. And this is when Théoden inherits the throne and the title of king.
Yeah, he was popular amongst his people. He was well known for his skill, kindness, and willingness to be king.
Yeah, Théoden, he was really a strong king.
During his time as king, he also took up the duties of first marshal. Look at that. Can't be set back. That'd be like if George W. Bush re-enlisted in the Air Force after 9/11. Wouldn't that have been wild? That's what this is the equivalent of. But yeah, we got an excerpt about that from Joel here.
In the days of Théoden, there was no man appointed to the office of first marshal. He came to the throne as a young man at the age of 32, vigorous and of martial spirit, and a great horseman. If war came, he would himself command the muster of Edoras.
Yeah, fuck it, dude. Fuck it. He was skilled with a blade as well as on horseback. Why not?
Yeah, his emblem was even like a horse, just riding across a green field. So he was all about hopping on his horse and riding out into action.
Let's do it. Théoden bore the sword Herugrim, which is said to have come from ancient times. Herugrim, what does that mean again? That's battle friend, right? I believe.
So it actually means very fierce or cruel or savage in the Rohirric language.
Battle friend is Guthvine, I think.
Yeah, you got it.
Yep.
We're
learning our Rohirric, guys.
We're getting there. Yeah, but this blade was over 500 years old, so this is a pretty old, renowned blade. And apparently the hilt had like a whole bunch of cool gems in it. It was supposed to be really cool.
Hell yeah, I wonder if it was made by the Northmen.
That's something that I've got to find out.
Or maybe even made by the dwarves when they were friendly with the Northmen. What? This is Tolkieneering all the shit we've learned this fucking run, right, guys?
Put it into practice, guys.
Put it into practice.
So, as king, Théoden was in charge of the marshals, and the first marshal of the Mark was a man named Eamund of the Eastfold, who married Théoden's sister, Théoden.
And in 2991, 1,000 years after I was born, they gave birth to their son Eomer.
And in 2995, just 4 years later, they gave birth to their daughter Éowyn. So these would be Théoden's niece and nephew.
Yeah. In 3002, it's really hard not to see that as 2003. That's funny as fuck.
3002.
In 3002, Éowyn was killed by orcs, and Théoden grew sick and perished.
Yeah, so unfortunately, within the same year, Éomer and Éowyn lost both of their parents, one to illness and one to orcs. Super tragic.
Fucking orcs.
So the two children, Éomer and Éomer, were adopted by their uncle, King Théoden. And the king was proud to take on his younger sister's children, though he was very saddened by Théoden's death. He had loved her very, very much. And the children reminded him of his sister.
Yeah, and I also would think that, like, he probably wanted to have more children, but his wife died.
That too, yeah.
So, like, he was like, yeah, more kids, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm sure he was very happy to take them. And I mean, they're almost like his own children anyway. They're just such close family.
Exactly, yeah. When Théoden's son and nephew came of age, they were both made marshals of the Mark.
Yeah, Théoden was made second marshal of the Mark, and Éomer was made third marshal.
Yeah. At this time, Hama, who we might remember, was both the captain of Théoden's household as well as the king's door ward.
Yeah, the doorman Hama.
The doorman.
Hama, the good man. And Elfhelm, another name we might know. This is the time when he was the leader of the garrison of Edoras.
Yeah.
And in the year 3014 is when Grima Wormtongue enters the picture
Grima Wormtongue.
and is made the king's counselor, who would look after the king as he aged.
Yep. So let's get into the War of the Ring, guys. So let's just delve right into it. How about that?
Yeah, so now that Grima Wormtongue is in the picture, that brings us to the weakening of Théoden.
Yes. By the time of the War of the Ring, Théoden had been king for nearly 40 friggin' years.
Yeah, and in the year 3014, it was noticed that Théoden began aging quite rapidly, and he was frequently ill, despite the people of Rohan being known to lead very long and healthy lives.
Yeah, they're supposed to be a hardy race of people.
Yeah, but here he is just withering away.
Because
So
they are descendants of the Northmen of Rovanian that didn't die of the plague.
yeah,
So they have that antibody at least, right?
yeah, they're pretty hardy, man. They've had to deal with a lot of shit.
What many of the people of Rohan did not know is that Théoden was under the influence of the wizard Saruman, who was using Grima Wormtongue to manipulate the king's mind.
Yeah, this is at the point when the wizard Saruman wished to seize control of Rohan, and he was using Grima to do that. And we've got an excerpt here.
This occurred early in the year 3014, when Théoden was 66. His malady may have been due to natural causes, though the Rohirrim commonly live till near or beyond their 80th year. But it may have been induced or increased by the subtle poisons administered by Grima. In any case, Théoden's sense of weakness and dependence on Grima was largely due to the cunning and the skill of this evil counselor's suggestions. It was his policy to bring his chief opponents into discredit with Théoden, if possible to get rid of them. It proved impossible to set them at odds with one another.
Yeah, so he just really got Théoden just wrapped around his finger.
Old Grima.
Old Grima.
Old Grima used his position to further Saruman's agenda of weakening Rohan from within.
Yeah, he really did. He used his position to great extent to his advantage.
Oh, yeah. Just like Rasputin, remember?
Just like Rasputin. Like Rasputin. We talked about that
at the end of the last,
in our last episode about Grima Wormtongue. Check out our last episode, guys, about Grima. That was a really fun episode.
I had so much fun making that episode.
So as the years passed, Saruman's grip on Théoden increased, and Grima was tasked with giving Théoden ill advice in order to weaken his mind further.
So at this point, Grima virtually ruled Rohan, though he always pretended to respect the king, and it was always the king's orders. It was always, the king wishes this.
He signed it this morning.
Yeah, I remember that shit. It's like a squiggle, like wouldn't you just like hold his hand up? Like,
right. Yeah, and at this time, Éomer began to realize that something was clearly up here, and he didn't like Grima at all. He'd often disrespect Grima straight to his face.
Mm-hmm. But Éomer would never disobey Théoden's orders, even if they were influenced by Grima. And we got an excerpt about that.
Théoden, before his sickness, had been much loved by all his kin and people, and the loyalty of Theodored and Éomer remained steadfast, even in his apparent dotage. Éomer was not an ambitious man, and his love and respect for Theodored, 13 years older than he, was only second to his love of his foster father. Grima therefore tried to play them one against the other in the mind of Théoden, representing Éomer as ever eager to increase his own authority and to act without consulting the king or his heir.
Yeah, that's some bullshit.
Yeah, so he's just trying to essentially like play Éomer and Theodored against each other in Théoden's mind. That's totally not the case at all.
Nope. Let's get back to when the return of Théoden.
Yeah, when he finally gets out of this
funk.
We'll
call it a funk.
This little funk with Grima, this poor guy.
And on September 19th, 3018, the wizard, Gandalf, he arrives in Edoras.
And this is when Grima angrily refused Gandalf an audience with the king.
By the next day, Théoden conceded and allowed Gandalf to visit him. Finally, I'll listen to what you want.
I'll let him through. However, under the influence of Grima, Théoden completely dismissed Gandalf after the wizard warned that Saruman was ready to attack. He just completely disregarded his advice.
Théoden, just disregards everything he says and tells him to take a horse and get out of here.
GTFO.
And when in the stables, Gandalf, he chooses Shadowfax of the Miras.
Yeah, and this really pissed off Théoden due to the fact that the Miras are traditionally only ridden by the King of the Mark.
Indeed.
And we have an excerpt here about this.
Speak not the name of Gandalf loudly in Théoden's ears. He is wroth. For Gandalf took the horse that is called Shadowfax, the most precious of all the king's steeds, chief of the Mieras, which only the Lord of the Mark may ride. 7 nights ago Shadowfax returned, but the king's anger is not less. For now the horse is wild, and will let no man handle him.
He's had a taste of freedom.
Of riding with somebody really cute.
Really cute. So at this time, this is also in war between Saruman and the Rohirrim. And the Rohirrim just erupts across the kingdom, and this is in September of 3018.
Saruman frequently sent orcs across the borders of Rohan in an attempt to claim land and exert power over the Rohirrim.
Yeah, he thought that it was time for Rohan to fall.
To just fuck off.
It's finally to just, wipe them off the map.
So in February of 3019, Théodred took command of Rohan's forces.
Yeah, and Saruman feared Théodred.
Legitimately feared him.
Yeah, he had the blood of a king, making Saruman fear that he could rise above Isengard.
Saruman sent out a force to kill Théodred straight up on February 25th, and around it happened the Battle of the Fords of Isen.
Yeah, and the battle, the first battle of the Fords of Isen was just a tragic loss, and this is when Théodred is mortally wounded and ultimately dies.
Erkenbrand rode to tell Théoden the devastating news, but because the king's mind was poisoned, he didn't even listen.
Not at all. And on February 27th, Erkenbrand again sends word to the king asking that Théoden send Éomer, fully armed with a force from Edoras, to defend the outer borders of Rohan, near Isengard and near the Gap of Rohan, because that area had fallen to Saruman.
They straight up, don't control that area anymore.
But again, Théoden denies this request due to Grima's advice. Grima just being a slimy little piece of shit and doing his job.
Yep, just like we talked about last week. Éomer obeyed the king and did not ride to the defense, but he did manage to pick up information about the whereabouts of the orcs.
Yeah, he then asked King Théoden if he could ride across Rohan to break up communication between them and just break up travel between Isengard and the east, because he had a fleeting suspicion that Saruman had allied with Sauron.
The two towers, no way.
The two towers.
But again, by the advice of Grima, Théoden denied Éomer's request.
Yeah, but this time, Éomer, for the first time, he finally disobeyed Théoden, and he went and slew the orcs anyway.
And then he was thrown in jail.
Yeah, straight up imprisoned.
After that.
By the order of Grima, but on the guise of that he had betrayed the king.
He meets the 3 hunters, and then later on that day is thrown in jail.
Awful. So on March 2nd of 3019, this is when Gandalf returns to Edoras with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. And this time, he is allowed to enter, but they were all forced to be unarmed.
Grima did not want Gandalf to challenge him using the wizard's staff.
But luckily, thankfully for everyone, our good man Hama was there, the door warden, and he allowed Gandalf to enter the Golden Hall with his staff.
Yeah, way to go, Hama.
Yeah, Hama's a good man. He's a real good guy.
Gandalf used his power to purge Saruman's hold on Théoden, a la the 1972 movie The Exorcist.
Yeah, power of Christ compels you.
Power of Christ compels you.
It compels you.
Compels you.
Yeah, and this is when Gandalf reveals himself as Gandalf the White.
Woo! Oh. We got an excerpt about that for you coming up here.
He raised his staff. There was a roll of thunder. The sunlight was blotted out from the eastern windows. The whole hall became suddenly dark as night. The fire faded to sullen embers. Only Gandalf could be seen, standing white and tall before the blackened hearth. In the gloom they heard the hiss of Wormtongue's voice. "Did I not counsel you, Lord, to forbid his staff? The fool Hama has betrayed us." There was a flash, as if lightning had cloven the roof. Then all was silent. Wormtongue sprawled on his face. "Now, Théoden, son of Thengel, will you hearken to me?" said Gandalf. "Do you ask for help?" He lifted his staff and pointed to a high window. There the darkness seemed to clear, and through the opening could be seen, high and far, a patch of shining sky. "Not all is dark. Take courage, Lord of the Mark, for better help you will not find. No counsel have I to give to those that despair, yet counsel I could give, and words I could speak to you. Will you hear them? They are not for all ears. I bid you come out before your doors and look abroad. Too long have you sat in the shadows and trusted to twisted tales and crooked promptings.
Théoden stood tall again, with no cane or walker after that, and he looks suddenly years younger. I think the effect that they use in the Lord of the Rings movie is pretty cool still.
It's a really old school effect, but it was just
real
perfect.
Subtle.
Real
perfect.
Subtle. It was done really well. Yeah, and his hair actually did turn blonde again, and many of his wrinkles on his face were worn away. He genuinely looked like a younger man again. And we have a excerpt here about this scene.
Slowly, Théoden left his chair. A faint light grew in the hall again. With faltering steps, the old man came down from the dais and paced softly through the hall. They came to the doors, and Gandalf knocked. "Open," he cried. "The Lord of the Mark comes forth." The doors rolled back, and a keen air came whistling in. A wind was blowing on the hill. "Now, Lord," said Gandalf, "look upon your land. Breathe the free air again." From the porch on top of the high terrace, they could see, beyond the stream, the green fields of Rohan fading into distant gray. "It is not so dark here," said Théoden. "No," said Gandalf, "nor does age lie so heavily on your shoulders as some would have you think. Cast aside your prop." From the king's hand the black staff fell, clattering on the stones. He drew himself up slowly, as a man that is stiff from long bending over time, over some dull toil. Now long and straight he stood, and his eyes were blue as he looked into the opening sky. "Dark have been my dreams of late," he said, "but I feel as one new awakened. I would now that you had come before, Gandalf, for I fear that already you have come too late, only to see the last days of my house. Not long shall stand the high hall which Brago, son of Eorl, built. Fire shall devour the high seat. What is to be done?" "Much," said Gandalf.
Always coming back with the good advice. Gandalf.
Yeah, always there, dude.
Much
can
I
be
mean,
done.
Gandalf does go on to elaborate, but we weren't going to quote the whole book for you.
Yes, though we want to.
Though we wish we could. There would totally be copyright issues. So after stepping outside onto the front porch and smelling the clean, fresh air, Théoden returns back into the Golden Hall, and this is when Gandalf asks that Éomer, who had been in prison previously, be brought before the king and be freed, and essentially forgiven.
And also just wanted to point out in the text, that is where it is called the porch. Remember we had a few weeks ago where we were like, yeah,
That's right. It is actually called the porch.
It's called the front porch, son.
Oh, the front porch.
Let's chill on the front porch, homie.
The front porch has a whole new epic meaning now.
Yeah.
So as we know, Théoden, of course, agrees to release his nephew, Éomer. And this is also when Théoden wields his ancient sword, Herogrim, again, for the first time in quite some time.
Yeah. He then agreed with Gandalf to confront Saruman in war. Though 70 years old, Théoden wished to lead the Rohirrim forces in battle himself, motherfucker.
He's got a fiery spirit, my friends. And at this moment, Théoden then looked down at Grima and pondered to himself, what do we do with this guy?
So Théoden knew this guy was an evil agent of Saruman, but he didn't know what to do with him, really.
What do we do with this guy?
He knew Grima was disloyal, but he gave Grima a choice anyway.
Yeah, he asked Grima if he would rather leave Edoras immediately or fight with Rohan against Saruman. And what do you think he did?
Well, he spit at the king and then ran.
Yeah, like a little bitch. But they let him go, and didn't like a bunch of people run after him to kill him after that too.
He says not to. He's like, let him take a horse and go, and
just
then
let him go.
Éomer's like, if any horse will bear him.
That's right. Yeah, Éomer coming in clutch with the response
with the burn.
Yeah. So after this, after the pussy runs off, they move on with their lives, and they hold a ceremony for Theodred, Théoden's son. At last, a very solemn scene for him, burying his son, his only heir. Especially now knowing that he is the end of his line.
Yep. So sad. Third line coming up. Here we go. Right. So yeah, that's pretty much going to lead us right up to the next big thing that happens in the life of Théoden. The Battle of friggin' Helm's Deep, guys.
Yeah, everyone loves this one. This is an epic battle. So the same day that Théoden is cured by Gandalf, that's March 2nd, this is when he announces that every man and boy in Edoras, in Rohan, and the entirety of Rohan, must soon be armed and ready to fight.
Yeah, be ready to fight, y'all. And Théoden then gifts Gandalf Shadowfax.
Yeah, he's like, you can just have him.
You know what you stole, you can just have it.
You can just have him.
And he gives Gimli a shield of the Rohirrim to accompany his axe, and also he gives him some mail that was made for him when he was a kid, right?
No.
No?
No. There was no mail that would fit him, and there was no mail that would be practical for a dwarf to wear anyway, because dwarf mail is the best.
Oh, I see.
It actually says that in the text.
Oh, okay. All right, fuck me. Damn.
I'm so sorry.
Joel with the dwarf facts
With
out
the
here.
Dwarfen facts. Dude,
holy
so
shit.
dwarves are the best at mail, the best at linking rings together. They got the best mail, just know that.
Yeah. Well, we've got an excerpt by Joel coming up for you about this.
Gandalf took no armor, but Gimli chose a cap of iron and leather that fitted well upon his round head, and a small shield he also took. It bore the running horse, white upon green, that was the emblem of the house of Eorl. May it keep you well, said Théoden. Gimli bowed. I am proud, Lord of the Mark, to bear your device, he said. Indeed, sooner would I bear a horse than be borne by one. I love my feet better, but maybe I shall come yet where I can stand and fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gimli coming in with the clutch quotes.
Théoden at this time also grants Éomer the title of King's heir and decides to ride with the homies. He's going to ride and lead everybody.
Yeah, I mean, after his own son dies, who better to be heir? Éomer is amazing.
Yeah, and he puts Théoden also puts Éowyn in charge of everything while he's gone because the people love her.
Yeah, he puts her in charge of the safety of the women and children.
Yeah, it's actually Hamma's idea, isn't it?
Yeah, actually. I believe it's Hamma that suggests
God,
that.
Hamma's
just
unsung hero, dog.
Unsung hero, man. Unsung no more.
Yeah, unsung no more, dog.
That guy's awesome.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind. Hamma's awesome.
Yeah.
But so is Éowyn. And if you want to know more about Éowyn, go back and check out our episode 45, the Éowyn character profile. Also a very dope episode.
I love that one. A lot of good excerpts in that one.
A lot of good ones in that one.
By the time that Théoden was ready to leave, he had summoned over 1,000 riders of Rohan to war.
Yeah, and as stacked as they could be, they were also stoked to have the 3 hunters and, of course, Gandalf.
Oh, yeah.
And we have an excerpt here about this.
Then suddenly he threw back his gray cloak and cast aside his hat and leaped to horseback. He wore no helm nor mail. His snowy hair flew free in the wind, and his white robes shone dazzling in the sun. Behold, the White Rider! Cried Aragorn, and all took up the words. Our king and the White Rider! They shouted. Forth, Eolingas! The trumpet sounded. The horses reared and neighed. Spear clashed on shield. Then the king raised his hand, and with a rush, like the sudden onset of a great wind, the last host of Rohan rode thundering into the west.
Théoden just leading that fucking awesome host.
Hell yeah.
So they would meet their enemies at the fortress of Helm's Deep. They figured that'd be the strategically best place to hold up and stake out.
And Théoden, of course, led his army while riding his mighty horse Snowmane, also one of the Miras, right?
Yes.
And brandishing his family's ancient sword, Harugrim.
That beautiful sword. And on their way to war, a soldier by the name of Carol encounters their company out in the countryside as they're galloping by and gives them the ill news about the results of the second battle of the Fords of Isen.
Yeah, because they were thinking about going, they were like, maybe we should go to the Fords.
That's originally where they were headed, yeah.
Yeah.
And he lets them know that the Fords have already been lost to enemy forces.
And now Erkenbrand was going to Helm's Deep to avoid greater defeat from Saruman. Wasn't Erkenbrand running around like trying to gather people to come back to Helm's Deep with him?
Yeah.
And they're like, they don't know where the fuck he is.
Yeah, that was the ultimate goal was like safety at Helm's Deep. Initially, Théoden and them were riding out to the Fords of Isen to help them out, but now they're like, oh, Helm's Deep.
They got some info. And here's a excerpt about that info.
He came, a wary man with a dented helm and cloven shield. Slowly he climbed up from his horse and stood there a while gasping. At length he spoke. Is Éomer here? He asked. You come at last, but too late, and with too little strength. Things have gone evilly since Théoden fell. We were driven back yesterday over the Isen with great loss. Many perished at the crossing. Then at night fresh forces came over the river against our camp. All Isengard must be emptied, and Saruman has armed the wild men and the herd folk of Dunland beyond the rivers, and these also he loosed upon us. We were overmastered. The shield wall was broken. Erkenbrand of Westfold has drawn off those men he could gather towards his fastness in Helm's Deep. The rest are scattered.
So after hearing this bad news, Gandalf suddenly realizes that he has urgent matters to attend to, also known by KOT Podcast as what, Joel?
Wizard shit.
Wizard shit.
He's got wizard shit to do.
He's got wizard shit to do.
And he just fucking books it right on out of there.
Oh, yeah. He promises to come back, though.
Yeah, he does promise to return. We got a quick excerpt about this.
Ride, Théoden, he said. Ride to Helm's Deep. Do not go to the fords of Isen, and do not tarry in the plain. I must leave you for a while. Shadowfax must bear me now on a swift errand. Turning to Aragorn and Éomer and the men of the king's household, he cried, Keep well the Lord of the Mark till I return. Await me at Helm's Gate. Farewell.
And he just runs off to do his wizard shit.
His wizard shit.
His wizard shit.
Wizard shit.
So Théoden does exactly what he's bid, and he continues riding to the Deeping Combe and on to Helm's Deep. And as they rode, Théoden noticed that the distant villages and farms were burning as a massive dark force approached. They could see this huge army was already moving towards them. Sauron's army was fucking huge.
Oh, yeah.
And the riders, they soon reached Helm's Deep, and Erkenbrand had not yet arrived.
Erkenbrand's nowhere to be found. Theoden, he orders the members of his house to join him in the Hornburg, which was the inner layer of the fortress.
Yeah, and the Deeping Wall, that was the outer layer, and this is where Éomer and his forces were positioned. At
midnight on March 3rd, as rain poured down, Helm's Deep was attacked. Saruman had sent approximately 10,000 orcs, Uruk-hai, wildmen, and wildmen of Dunland to assault the fortress. All out assault.
All-out assault.
And here's an excerpt about that.
Brazen trumpet sounded. The enemy surged forward, some against the Deeping Wall, others against the causeway and the ramp that led up to the Hornburg gates. There the hugest orcs were mustered, and the wild men of the Dunland fells. A moment they hesitated, and then on they came. The lightning flashed, and blazoned upon every helm and shield the ghastly hand of Isengard was seen. They reached the summit of the rock, then drove towards the gates.
Deep into the nights, the orcs and the wild men attempt to breach the wall of the Hornburg.
Yeah, they eventually use some kind of explosive device. It's not specifically described, but something that was devised by Saruman to burst through the walls.
Yeah, this is not good here.
No, this is slaughter. We got a quick excerpt about this.
Then there was a crash and a flash of flame and smoke. The waters of the deeping stream poured out hissing and foaming. They were choked no longer. A gaping hole was blasted in the wall. A host of dark shapes poured in. Devilry of Saruman, cried Aragorn. They have crept in the culvert again while we talked, and they have lit the fire of Orthanc beneath our feet. Elendil! Elendil!
Yeah, this is when some epic shit starts happening. Théoden could not bear to simply watch from above, and he felt the need to take action.
Yeah, we got a little mini-zerped here about that.
I fret in this prison, said Théoden. If I could have set a spear in rest, riding before my men upon the field, maybe I could have felt again the joy of battle, and so ended. But I serve little purpose here.
Yeah, Théoden doesn't like this shit, and he makes a decision. Time for a suicide mission to make a cool exit.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a cool excerpt about this here.
The end will not be long, said the king, but I will not end here. Taken like an old badger in a trap. Snowmane and Hasufel and the horses of my guard are in the inner court. When dawn comes, I bid my men sound Helm's horn, and I will ride forth. Will you ride with me then, son of Arathorn? Maybe we shall cleave a road, or make such an end as to be worth a song, if any left to sing of us hereafter. I will ride with you, said Aragorn.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
At the very least, we'll go out in glory, and maybe they'll even write a song about us.
Song or two.
Hell yeah. And on March 4th, this is when Théoden leads a company of several riders, including Aragorn, to ride out of the Hornburg and down the causeway, potentially to a suicide.
Yeah, to God knows what. Snowmane trampled orcs while Théoden stabbed at them using Harrowgrim. They're having a good time. We got an excerpt about this instance here from Joel.
But on the walls men looked up, listening with wonder, for the echoes did not die. Ever the horn blasts wound on among the hills. Nearer now and louder they answered one to another, blowing fierce and free. Helm! Helm! The riders shouted. Helm is risen and comes back to war. Helm for Théoden King! And with that shout the king came. His horse was white as snow. Golden was his shield, and his spear was long. At his right hand was Aragorn, Elendil's heir. Behind him rode the lords of the house of Eorl the Young. Light sprang in the sky. Night departed.
Yeah.
Badass,
yeah,
man.
dude, with the rising of the sun.
Hell yeah.
And what else comes with the rising of the sun but Gandalf and Erkenbrand with a host of infantry?
Yeah. So
Tide
this
is
is where
turning.
this is where it gets a little different from the movie, because in the movie they were all on horses.
They're on horses.
And
yeah.
in real life they were actually all on foot.
Mm-hmm.
But together with Théoden's small force and all this infantry, they were able to kill many of the orcs and almost completely surrounded Saruman's forces.
Yeah, I love what they also mentioned in the battle, like once the king comes down the causeway, the people who are defending in the deep where the hole is,
Yeah.
they have like a huge resurgence too.
Oh, yeah,
Because they're like, the king rides, hell
The
yeah.
king.
So they like come out of the caves and they push him out of the wall. Yeah, it's fucking awesome. Helm's Deep is awesome.
Helm's Deep is an amazing battle. Not only just like the film version for what it did in film, but also just like the story in the book is just so fucking badass.
So
and
great.
cool.
So great.
And when Gandalf realizes that there's a whole bunch of trees way off in the distance, he realizes that these trees are in fact horns sent here by Treebeard. And he basically allows the remainder of the orcs to retreat back into the trees. He
Go on out of the Go on into the trees, guys. It'll be fine.
And this is when the trees devour all the remaining orcs.
Yeah, what the fuck, trees?
Yeah, what the fuck, man? I still, that terrifies me.
Yeah,
to this
that's
day.
the scariest thing in Tolkien.
They took all the
Yeah.
bodies. They took all the bodies. That's all you need to know. It's that scary.
And thus, the Battle of Helm's Deep was won.
Yeah, the battle was won. It was a bloody battle, but a fucking cool battle.
Yeah.
Metal as shit. But
Despite this victory, many important men died, including the door warden Hamma, who had been killed in front of the Hornburg, and they hewed at his body as he lay dead there.
Hamma, good man Hamma. He's honestly, he's one of those like side characters that you can't help but love.
Yeah, Hamma's dope.
Hamma-
They have him eaten by a wolf in the movie.
Yeah, and the wolf, he gets like his head bitten off by a wolf
his
or
whole
some
face
shit.
is like bitten
He's
off. Yeah, that was wrong.
That was wrong.
Shouldn't have done that, Peter. So after the battle, of course, Théoden summoned an Eore and rode to Dunharrow to prepare for further war. What is an Eore, Joel?
Yeah, so just to clarify, an Eore is a term used to describe the full muster of Rohan at any given time. So in Théoden's day, the full Eore of Rohan was counted to be about 100 Eoreds, and a single Eored was 120 soldiers. So altogether that came to be 12,000 fighting men.
Yeah.
Would be the entire Eored. It's basically like all the potential fighters in Rohan at one time.
Yeah, at Dunharrow, Théoden met up with Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and they all rode to Isengard in a small company to confront Saruman, that asshole.
Finally, we're going to finally confront that piece of shit as he's hiding out in his tower. And we have a excerpt here about this.
The king then chose men that were unhurt and had swift horses, and he sent them forth with tidings of the victory into every vale of the Mark, and they bore also his summons, bidding all men, young and old, to come in haste to Edoras. There the Lord of the Mark would hold an assembly of all that could bear arms on the third day after the full moon. To ride with him to Isengard, the king chose Eomer and 20 men of his household. With Gandalf would go Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli. In spite of his hurt, the dwarf would not stay behind.
You know Gimli's going along. So as they travel along, this is also when Théoden meets his first Ent.
Yeah, and we got an excerpt about this wild moment.
Even as he spoke, there came forward out of the trees 3 strange shapes. As tall as trolls they were, 12 feet or more in height. Their strong bodies, stout as young trees, seemed to be clad with raiment or with hide of close-fitting gray and brown. Their limbs were long, and their hands had many fingers. Their hair was stiff, and their beards gray-green as moss. They gazed out with solemn eyes, but they were not looking at the riders. Their eyes were bent northwards.
Yeah, the Rohirrim seeing a bunch of strange shit all at once. It's pretty funny.
A lot of strange things happening, and now they see for the first time these crazy beings that they thought were just fairy tales.
Yeah. On March 5th, they reached Isengard, where Saruman was imprisoned in Orthanc.
Yeah, and upon arriving at Isengard, Théoden is greeted by the first hobbits he has ever seen. A lot of firsts for Théoden.
Yeah, and that, of course, is Merry, Brandybuck, and Pippin Took, our friends.
Merry and Pippin. And inside the circle of Isengard, Gandalf and company approach Orthanc to attempt to talk to Saruman.
Saruman attempts to put a spell on Théoden to make him agree to peace with Isengard, and he does this with his voice.
With his power of voice. The only power he has left.
It's all it.
But Théoden is not fooled, of course, being, awesome.
It's not at first apparent what Théoden will say when when Saruman has started talking to them. He stays silent for most of the exchange.
But Théoden does ultimately scorn Saruman and says that Rohan will never have peace until Saruman himself hangs at the window with a gibbet. And we've got a fucking awesome quote here about this.
"We will have peace," said Théoden at last thickly, with an effort. Several riders cried out gladly. Théoden held up his hand. "Yes, we will have peace," he said now in a clear voice. "We will have peace when you and all your works have perished, and the works of your dark master, to whom you would deliver us. You are a liar, Saruman, and a corrupter of men's hearts. You hold out your hand to me, and I perceive only a finger of the claw of Mordor, cruel and cold. Even if your war on me was just, as it was not, for were you 10 times as wise, you would have no right to rule me and mine for your own profit, as you desired. Even so, what will you say of your torches in the Westfold, and the children that lie dead there? And they hewed Hamma's body before the gates of the Hornburg after he was dead. When you hang from a gibbet at your window for the sport of your own crows, I will have peace with you and Orthanc. So much for the house of Errol. A lesser son of great sires am I, but I do not need to lick your fingers. Turn elsewhither. I fear your voice has lost its charm."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just stick it to him. Isn't this one of your replies? Gibbets and crows.
Gibbets and crows.
Yeah, this is when he starts to slip too. So when Saruman starts really
Dotard.
going down.
Doesn't he call him a dotard?
He does call him a dotard, yeah.
Dotard.
So this is when Gandalf then breaks the staff of Saruman and locks the wizard in his tower with Grima.
Sucks to suck. Have fun in there, guys.
Yeah, that's got to suck. Just like for both of them, like being stuck with Grima sucks. Being stuck with Saruman sucks.
Yeah, we got to see a sitcom of them living there together.
Grima and Saruman
for a few months. Yeah.
Fun times in Orthanc.
Yeah.
So when the company returns to Edoras, Théoden is approached by Merry, who bows and offers Théoden his sword.
Théoden gladly accepts, making Merry his esquire. Yeah, they become very close very quickly. Yeah. And here's an excerpt about that.
"But come now, eat and drink, and let us speak together while we may, and then you shall ride with me." "May I?" said Merry, surprised and delighted. "That would be splendid." He had never felt more grateful for any kindness in words. "I am afraid I am only in everyone's way," he stammered, "but I should like to do anything I could, you know." "I doubt it not," said the king. "I have had a good hill pony made ready for you. He will bear you as swift as any horse by the roads that we shall take." "There are no great weapon hoards here, lord," answered Éomer. "Maybe a light helm might be found to fit him, but we have no mail or sword for one of his stature." "I have a sword," said Merry, climbing from his seat and drawing from his black sheath his small bright blade. Filled suddenly with love for this old man, he knelt on one knee and took his hand and kissed it. "May I lay the sword of Meriadoc of the Shire on your lap, Théoden King?" he cried. "Receive my service if you will." "Gladly I will take it," said the king, and laying his long old hands upon the brown hair of the hobbit, he blessed him. "Rise now, Meriadoc, esquire of Rohan of the house of Meduseld," he said. "Take your sword and bear it unto good fortune." "As a father you shall be to me," said Merry. For a little while, said Théoden.
And this is where you also see that reoccurring theme of the fatherly love.
Yeah,
He's got a lot of fatherly love to give to people.
he really does.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the things that makes him such a great leader. Just
same. And he also gives Merry his pony Stibba.
yeah, this is when Merry gets that pony.
Yeah. And on March 6th, after Gandalf and Pippin leave for Minas Tirith, Théoden and his army ride back to Dunharrow to prepare for war.
Keep on preparing for that big old battle coming our way, because what's up next, guys? The Battle of Pelennor Fields.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is when we get into the Ride of the Rohirrim.
Yeah. So let's take it back to March 9th. The messenger, Hirgon from Gondor, arrives at Dunharrow with the red arrow, a symbol of alliance between Gondor and Rohan. Means time to come fight, buddy.
Yeah, time to go help Gondor. But much like Errol the Young, Théoden, he replies so quickly he actually surprises the Aaron Rider, doesn't he?
Yeah, I love that shit in the movie too. And he's like, they kind of make it seem like a second he's gonna be like,
Yeah.
fuck Gondor. But yeah,
And then he's like, and Rohan will answer.
most of the Rohirrim.
Yeah, he answers very quickly that Rohan's going to answer their call for aid. And then the very next day, Théoden musters all the Rohirrim that he was able to gather so far at Dunharrow. And he had an array of about 6,000 strong riders. And this was less than he had originally wished for. And Théoden originally claims that if he had enough time, he might have even been able to get around like 10,000.
Sick.
Which is pretty insane. We got an excerpt here about this.
The Rohirrim had increased since the days of Folkline, and before the attacks of Saruman in full muster would probably have produced more than 12,000 riders, so that Rohan would not have been denuded so entirely of trained defenders. In the event, owing to losses in the Western War, the hastiness of the muster, and the threat from the north and the east, Théoden only led out a host of some 6,000 spears, though it was still the greatest riding of the Rohirrim that was recorded since the coming of Errol.
Yeah, so not as much as he had hoped, but it was still the greatest ride since the ride of Errol. So
Errol the Young.
Errol the
yes.
Young. That's something, man. That's not nothing.
And at this time, also Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, they set up for the Paths of the Dead to gain additional support / just die in the caves.
Yeah, nobody's really sure, but that's when they split off and go their way through the paths.
30 Dunedain Rangers, Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn, and Elodan and Elrohir.
Hell yeah, that's a badass company.
I'd take them to the Paths of the Dead with me.
So meanwhile, this is also when Théoden dismisses Merry from his service as esquire, and this is also when he tells Éowyn that she would be taking care of the people while he was gone at battle, rather than her coming to battle. But little did Théoden know, but both of these people fully intended to go and not be left behind, and they were so determined that they disguised themselves and rode anyway.
Yeah, did it anyway.
Yeah, Merry, he didn't disguise himself as much. At one point, he kind of like rolls himself up with the luggage to just kind of
look like a bag, yeah.
To look like a bag, but still, yeah, they were both determined to go, and they went nonetheless.
On March 13th, the Rohirric force passed through the Druidan forest, which was inhabited by a group of native men known as the Druidain, or Woses.
Yeah, and these people were led by our good friend Hanbury Han, one of our favorite characters.
Yeah, Shafted.
And Hanbury Han agreed to lead the Rohirrim to a secret pass through the forest to get to their intended battle ahead.
Hanbury Han advised Théoden that the road they were taking was guarded and that they would be blocked and ambushed and fucked.
Yeah, so he's like, let me take you to this secret way. We don't like orcs, so we take you secret way. You kill orcs, we're all good.
We're all good here. We're friends,
So, taking Hanbury Han's advice, Théoden and his army reached the Ramas at Kor. That's the outer wall on March 15th. So this is kind of like the border getting into the fields of Pelennor.
Yeah, Théoden advises his forces to quietly enter the inner circle of Pelennor, and prepare for a surprise charge at the defense of the city. Yeah, they're not met with any opposition along the way.
No.
Because the people were waiting for them up to get fucked in the north. They're still waiting any minute now.
Yeah, they totally bypassed the ambush, so now they're just like fucking walking on up.
I just wait for it. They're up there, just wait for it.
So when their forces were finally ready, this is when Théoden has them sound their horns, and they make their grand arrival to the surprise of all the forces of Mordor.
And this is when Théoden held up his sword Harugrim and made the famous speech calling all the riders to arise. And we got an excerpt of that beautiful shit right here.
At that sound, the bent shape of the king sprang suddenly erect. Tall and proud he seemed again, and rising in his stirrups, he cried in a loud voice, more clear than any there had ever heard a mortal man achieve before. Arise, arise, riders of Théoden! Fell deeds awake! Fire and slaughter! Spear shall be shaken, shield shall be splintered. A sword day, a red day, ere the sun rises. Ride now, ride now, ride to Gondor. With that he seized a great horn from Guthlaf, his banner-bearer, and blew such a blast upon it that it burst asunder. And straightway all the horns in the host were lifted up in music, and the blowing of the horns of Rohan in that hour was like a storm upon the plain and a thunder in the mountains. Ride now, ride now, ride to Gondor.
Ride to Gondor!
To
Hell
Gondor!
Yeah! To Gondor!
Yeah, so he sounds the charge, and they just go for it.
Death or glory, dude.
For death, for glory.
Death or glory, just another story. Yeah.
So Théoden's first move on the battlefield was to challenge the leader of the Haradrim, who rode the great Momokil, the great Oliphant.
Yeah, though the chieftain was a tall and strong Seldaron, Théoden managed to kill him, causing the force of the Harad to withdraw to an extent. He was called like the Black Serpent or something, right?
Yeah, he had a cool title.
Yeah.
So after this small victory, this is when the Witch King of Angmar himself, the leader of the assault on Minas Tirith, this is when he realizes this threat that the Rohirrim now are, and he mounts his fell beast and goes to confront Théoden himself.
Yeah. And the Witch King, of course, Sauron's deadliest servant. Check him out in episode 61, the Witch King of Angmar character profile.
Yeah, that was a pretty great episode. It was
very popular.
Seemed pretty popular, yeah, actually. And so when the Witch King finally swoops down and confronts Théoden, Théoden stands firmly with his sword in hand, but unfortunately is crushed by his horse, Snowmane, who had fallen, pierced by an arrow. And we have an excerpt about this tragic scene here.
But lo, suddenly in the midst of the glory of the king, his golden shield was dimmed. The new morning was blotted from the sky, dark fell about him. Horses reared and screamed, men cast from the saddle lay groveling on the ground. To me, cried Théoden. Up, Eorlingas, fear no darkness. But Snowmane went wild with terror and stood upon high, fighting with the air, and then, with a great scream, he crashed upon his side. A black dart had pierced him. The king fell beneath him. The great shadow descended like a falling cloud, and behold, it was a winged creature, if bird, then greater than all other birds. It was naked, neither quill nor feather did it bear, and its vast pinions were as webs of hide mounted between horned fingers, and it stank. And upon it sat a shape, black-mantled, huge and threatening. A crown of steel he bore, but between rim and robe naught was there to see, save only a deadly gleam of eyes. The Lord of the Nazgul. Down, down it came, and then, folding its fingers' webs, it gave a croaking cry, and settled upon the body of Snowmane, digging in with its claws, stooping its long, naked neck. But Théoden was not utterly forsaken. The knights of his house lay slain about him, yet one stood there still, Dernhelm the Young, faithful beyond fear. And he wept, for he had loved his lord as a father.
And who was Dernhelm but Éowyn, shield maiden of Rohan?
Yeah.
So just as the Witch King's fell beast was about to feast on Théoden's flesh, feast on his flesh. This is when Éowyn, disguised as Dernhelm, intercepts the beast and chops off its head.
Chops its fucking head off, dog.
Just clear with her sword, just boom.
In Éowyn, she kills the Witch King, and if you want to see how she does that, see either, I guess, the Witch King episode or or the Éowyn episode. You got your choices.
Witch King, episode 61, or the Éowyn character profile. That's episode 45.
Life is full of choices, guys.
This is one. What will you choose?
Unfortunately, it was too late for Théoden, who was already dying.
Yeah, his body had unfortunately been crushed under Snowmane, and he was also 71 fucking years old.
71 fucking years old, yeah.
So at this point, he's pretty much done, unfortunately. And what's even more tragic is that Théoden never found out that it was actually Éowyn who saved him from the Witch King.
Yeah.
He just saw this young Durnhelm guy.
Yeah, like that guy's cool.
Yeah, and then, after this all, she falls, and then he falls, and he never finds out that it was her.
Yeah. Théoden's last words were spoken to Éomer, actually, before he died. And we got an excerpt of that from Joel.
Then one of the knights took the king's banner from the hand of Gulflaf, the banner-bearer who lay dead, and he lifted it up slowly. Slowly Théoden opened his eyes. Seeing the banner, he made a sign that it should be given to Éomer. "Hail, King of the Mark," he said. "Ride now to victory. Bid Éowyn farewell." And so he died, and knew not that Éowyn lay near him, and those who stood by wept, crying, "Théoden King! Théoden King!"
Damn, that's sad. But the saddest thing I think about this is poor Guthlaf. We just
That's right.
we just met this dude, the banner bearer. That's horn Théoden broke, which I'm sure he liked that horn. I'm sure.
Yeah, you might remember him from a couple excerpts ago.
And
that's literally the only other time he's mentioned.
Yep, is when he's killed.
He's mentioned and he's just killed shortly thereafter. He's one of those side characters that's like mentioned to be killed.
Poor Guthlaf.
Poor Guthlaf.
Unsung hero.
Unsung.
But so passes Théoden Ednew.
On a more serious note, yes.
On a more serious note.
The passing of Théoden.
And we consider him one of the greatest kings of all time for sure.
One of the greatest. Absolutely. And as we know, the Battle of Pelennor Fields was eventually won by the forces of Gondor and Rohan, granted at an extreme loss of life. There is some crazy casualties, but Théoden's body was ultimately brought inside Minas Tirith and laid near the Tower of Icthelion.
It was closely guarded and honored with Théoden's colors on display, which were green and white. He lay beneath a golden blanket with his sword Herugrim and his shield.
And Théoden's body was later taken to a tomb in the Hollows until the War of the Ring was over. And it was later put into a coffin to be ready to be transferred over to Rohan eventually.
Yeah, and on July 22nd, they held a funeral for Théoden in Minas Tirith.
And King Aragorn offered to leave him there in Minas Tirith, in one of the tombs there, where he would be greatly honored. But Éomer made the executive decision to choose to bring his body back to Rohan, which I think was appropriate.
I think it's an appropriate choice.
Especially considering their tradition of burying them out front in the mountains.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, on August 10th, the second funeral was held for Théoden in Rohan, and a glorious feast was held in his honor in Meduseld.
See, that seems more the right speed.
More fitting. Let's have some fucking mead, guys.
Yeah. I'm sure that must have been a hell of a party.
Yeah.
And as we know, the king was buried there in Edoras out front, and this is when Éomer becomes king. First of his line.
First of the new line, number 3. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's about the end of the life of Théoden, and we thought it'd be fitting to actually end on the same poem that the episode started with. And this is a poem that was actually, originally it was spoken by Éomer.
Out of doubt, out of dark, to the day's rising, he rode singing in the sun, sword unsheathing, hope he rekindled, and in hope ended. Over death, over dread, over doom lifted, out of loss, out of life, on to long glory.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's the story of Théoden Ednew, my friends.
Yeah. Pour one out. Put one up for Théoden. So let's have some final thoughts on Théoden here. Let's wrap it up in a bow.
Yeah, so his life, it was pretty tragic between the loss of his wife and then the loss of his sister and brother-in-law and then the loss of his son. Yeah. And then just knowing that he is the last of his house.
It's a lonely feeling.
It is a very lonely feeling. It was quite tragic, and yet he does so well.
Yeah. And we think Théoden is one of the best kings of the Third Age, and honestly probably one of the best leaders ever.
One of the finest. He's just an amazing leader.
And one of the things that I love in particular about this dude is he's not only a good king, but he's a good father, like we said earlier in the thing.
Yeah.
He has very fatherly love to give to people.
Mm-hmm.
I never had a daddy, if you can tell.
Yeah, like well, he's I mean he's a father to Theodred until unfortunately Theodred dies.
Mm-hmm.
Then he adopts Eomer and Eowyn, and then he's a father
And then,
figure to Mary.
To Mary as well. Yeah.
You know, who knows who else? I'm sure he's probably a father figure to Hama too.
I'm sure.
And of course, we'd be remiss not to again just throw credit out there to Bernard Hill. Come on.
Yeah, got to say it again. Give him that Oscar.
Just amazing stuff. Bernard Hill, he is King Théoden. He deserves the Oscar.
Deserves it. He has the official Keep on Tolkien Oscar.
He has our endorsement.
So what do we got next week?
Well, next week, guys, is our season finale of season 5, and it's going to be episode 67 on Eomer Eodig. And you guys better tune in for this because it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a good finale. I'm writing it right now. I'm very confident that it'll be cute.
It's going to be a great way to round off our Rohan content. Eomer is an amazing character. He's badass as hell, and he really finishes off the age.
Oh, yeah.
Really well.
Oh, yeah.
But that's about all we've got for you today, guys. Thanks again for listening. We are KOT Podcast.
Subscribe to us on Spotify, SoundCloud, or iTunes. Go to www.thatwebsite.com/keepontolkien.
Yeah, stay up to date with all of our new episodes. And while you're there, don't forget to rate us and give us a review.
Yeah, if you like us.
If you like us. And if you don't, move on.
Just move along, sirs. Don't forget to check out our new merch store. That URL again is keep-on-tolkien-podcast.tmail.com.
Yeah, don't forget to follow us on all your favorite social media. Join our new Discord. We're particularly active. The server name is Keep on Tolkien Podcast. There'll be a link in the video description to join. And you can also follow us on Twitter at KOT Podcast.
Yeah, if you want to follow me, I'm at DannyJKOT. Don't tweet that much anymore, but we'll see.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/official Keep on Tolkien. And while you're there, don't forget to join the KOT Talk group that's associated with us. You can kind of hang out with other listeners and chat us up and share some fun memes.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram at Keep on Tolkien Podcast. And we'd also like to take this time to throw out a thank you so much to our patrons on Patreon.
Thank you, patrons. It is because of you that we can still do this.
Yes. And if you feel like doing a subscription to our Patreon, you can cancel at any time. You can set your amount. Yeah, hit us up at www.patreon.com/KOT podcast.
Yeah, the KOT, the podcast, it still comes out of pocket, but your donations help so much for just helping us subsidize costs and keeping up with a good quality that you expect. And there's also some content that you can get for subscribing, so that'll be fun as well. New content coming.
Yeah, and some people have been asking us about if Patreon really isn't your speed, one-time donations. And we are totally down for that. Shoot us an email or a message on social media, and we will make it happen. One-time donations are awesome, too.
Yeah, we love you guys. But that's about all we got for you today.
I'm Danny J.
And I'm Joel N. And as always, keep on Tolkien.
Awen Tuluva. Solid.
Nice. Well done.